Now back to AHA Business Radio, creating aha moments for business, by business, and about business. Once again, here's your host, Allan Hirsh.
Well, welcome back. I'm in the studio with Linda Katz-Wilner from Successfully Speaking, and we're talking about what she calls the 3 V's of speaking, presentations, visual, vocal, and verbal. And we've been talking primarily so far about visual. Are there any other visual images that you think would be important to the listeners that we haven't talked about?
Yes, how you stand. When you think about going especially to a networking meeting or getting up in front of a room, how do you stand? Do you stand with your feet crossed and your arms crossed? Or do you stand off balance? Or are you leaning on the lectern when you're talking? All of these things throw off optimal.
So what are those? What's the cross legs and the
cross legs? First of all, women do that more than men, but you're very off balance when you do it. You really want to be solid on the floor with your feet maybe shoulder length apart or 6 inches apart. Stand there with your feet facing the person, because you'll see in very many networking situations, if your feet are away from that person, you're really on your way out. You're not as connected.
Well, yeah.
So it's important. And even if you're speaking in front of a group, instead of just turning your head when you look to different parts of the room, turn your whole body. So
I can't turn my head anymore. So
that makes it easier for you.
but
think about your heart is facing the person you're speaking to. And if you keep your torso along with your body and you stand straight, you look more confident.
Yeah. No, when you talk about shoulder length apart, from my background, it's a sports stance. Mm-hmm. It's an athletic stance. Is feet shoulder length apart, and you can do just about anything athletically. When it's too wide or too narrow,
you're off balance.
You're off balance. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, they make very, very big impressions on me, and I appreciate that. And I hope the audience out there appreciates it as well.
And throwing your hip out a little bit. It's hard because this is just radio, but if you stand there and your hip is tilted outward, it doesn't look as powerful. And I've worked with a lot of women executives who may do that, and I encourage them to stand straighter when they're speaking.
And that's interesting. But I know to try to stand straight, present that power stance, I guess you call
without being too stiff.
Right.
So there's a balance.
Right.
Certainly a balance.
So the second one is vocal. Mm-hmm. So what are some of the things you run into? And I know I do it. My wife's the biggest critic of me. I say ums sometimes, or throw an end or a but or something, which I know is disconcerting. Now that I'm on the radio and had some training, I catch myself sometimes, but sometimes I don't. Mm-hmm. But that's a big problem for a lot of people, and you can hear it in their voices and in their presentations. It reminds me of someone was telling me a story when they were in public speaking in college. There was a bell on the, and every time someone used one of those, rang the bell, you could never figure out what they're saying because they're always ringing the bell.
Right.
And I don't know if you use that type, but I find that to be negative.
Punishment, right.
Punishment.
And it's interesting because some people say, just count the ums. And I have found if you talk to somebody and say, just try not to say the ums, or put a paper clip in your pocket every time you say an you're punishing yourself, or snap a rubber band on your wrist. That's all negative. And what happens if you tell somebody, just don't say it paralyzes them. I've seen people just unable to talk once they say it. You say that because the first thing they say is, What I tell people to do is insert a pause. You want to think about what you want to add, not what you need to eliminate. It's the same way if in sports, if I say in golf, I better not hit it into the water. If you play golf, you know exactly what happens.
I used to do, yes.
It goes right in the water.
You put bad thoughts in your mind, the bad thoughts happen.
Absolutely.
You have to put positive thoughts in your mind.
Somebody who stutters and says, I better not stutter when I get up there to talk, they probably will. But if they say, I'm going to speak fluently, or I'm going to hit the ball straight, or I'm going to insert pauses and be comfortable with the pauses, then they go away, those word fillers. The word fillers become such noise in the message that if the audience is starting to count them or noticing them, there's a problem as soon as it brings attention to itself. But don't think too much about not doing it. Think about what can you do to make your speech sound better, and that is just pause.
Pause, think, and make sure you know what you want to say.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Not say something while you're thinking.
Right. Right. And people often keep talking because they don't want to be interrupted. So they keep their voice going and they keep talking like that. But they don't look confident. They don't look powerful. They don't look like they're in control. You are relinquishing the space so that somebody else might interrupt, but in the long run, you're going to sound much more polished if you don't have these word fillers.
Well, it sounds like at home, if I don't keep speaking, my wife always interrupts. She interrupts anyway. And she says, I interrupt anyway, so it's... I was at a convention, a meeting once with both my mother and my sister, and someone said, who talks the most? And I answered, whoever gets started first.
Right. Or the loudest.
Or the loudest, right. But again, that's part of that vocal is the sound. Mm-hmm. Is it not?
The vocal, right, just to distinguish the difference between the verbal and the vocal. The verbal is what we say, the words we choose, the vocabulary. But the vocal is how we sound. So it's everything from...
Let me just pause here. We can talk about the difference a little bit when we come back. Just want to remind everybody out there, if they're listening, please give us a call, 410-481-1300. I'm in the studio with Linda Katz-Wilner, Successfully Speaking, and I'm Allan Hirsh. So if you have any comments or questions that Linda can help you with, give us a call, 410-481-1300. So we were talking about the verbal and vocal here.
Right, the vocal. Let's think about how you sound. It could be anything from speaking too quickly. So I'm speaking so quickly that it's really hard to understand what I'm saying. Or I'm speaking way too slowly. So it could be my rate. It could be that I have a very high-pitched voice and you don't really want to listen to somebody speaking that way. Or I'm trying to lower my voice and I make it so low. I get into this vocal fry, which has been in the media a lot, where people are talking at the bottom of their range and you can't project it. It's hard to hear. That's become pandemic in the millennials, this vocal fry. And there's been a lot of controversy because there's been a lot of talk in the workplace and on radio of females using this pattern. I must say it's used by males and females, but females are getting a bad rap about it, because they may be trying to sound more like men, bringing their voice down. And some research has shown that they're not as credible if they're speaking in this low-pitched voice. Another voice characteristic...
Are they... go ahead. I was going to ask, when they're in the really high-pitched, squeaky voice, which might be natural to them, does that...
Or habitual. It may not be natural, but it's their habit. Because we can change it. Okay. We can change a high-pitched voice and bring it down. We could take a low-pitched voice and bring it up. It depends also where you're resonating your voice. So some people can be speaking more in their nose and they're talking like this. Like if you remember the nanny, the nasal voice, that's going to be a problem. And then that low pitch is a problem. So we can do exercises to help place your voice so that you have an optimal voice quality. The other part is the up talk. If you know what that is.
I have no idea what that is.
Like this, and I'm making a statement. But at the end of every phrase, my voice goes up.
I have a question.
And it used to be like Valley Girl talk, and it sounds like I'm asking a question every time I'm making a statement. This is also pandemic in the millennials, and it becomes a problem because you lose your credibility. Now, studies have shown when millennials judge millennials, they see nothing wrong with it. If a baby boomer judges a millennial, they are very irritated by this speaking pattern. And so I coach a lot of my clients and say, until your boss is a millennial, if your boss is a baby boomer, you may need to change your pattern to sound more confident.
The odds are
That's
your boss
changing.
is, when 66% or approximately two-thirds of all businesses in the United States today are owned by baby boomers. The odds are two out of three times.
At least for the next few years.
And that wealth being transferred and the exit planning that has to go on in this country over the next 20 years is just amazing. But in the workplace, the millennials now have to deal with it.
Mm-hmm. And when people, in a lot of my workshops, I'll say, let's go around the room and introduce yourself. And if I said to you, hi, my name is Linda Wilner, and my company is Successfully Speaking, you might say, are you sure? Because it doesn't sound as confident as, hi, my name is Linda Wilner. My company is Successfully Speaking. That sounds like I know what I'm talking about. And so that's something that I work on with people to help them eliminate this uptalk.
Well, I actually work on them from a coaching philosophy of changing that around, saying who you are, but what you believe in. So you can communicate who you are and why you do what you do and end up with what you do.
And think about that.
That's a very different way of teaching someone. I just did the ahs. Teaching someone how to communicate in a 30 seconds so people know who you are rather than just what you do.
And Allan, think about that. If you did that all with uptalk, you're not going to sound that confident.
That's right.
So it becomes important no matter what you're saying, your voice should come down as a statement. If you're giving a statement, of course, if it's a question, let it go up. If you're listing a lot of things, your voice may go up to let the person know, I'm not done, Allan. I'm still talking and I have something else to say. I might do that. Let my voice go up to indicate that. But when I'm done saying it, my voice should come down. And that's the critical part that I coach my clients.
Well, that sounds wonderful. Let me, it's a great spot to take our next commercial break. And as we do, just want to remind everybody that when I come back, I will continue the conversation with Linda Katz-Wilner, Successfully Speaking. Later in the show, I have the AHA Business Trivia Contest. I'm Allan Hirsh, and this is AHA Business Radio on CBS Sports Radio, 1300 AM.